year. I think 2015 truly has been my best year.
Hi, and welcome to the podcast with Alex Designs. I'm your host, Alex Harris, and today we're chatting with Zephan Blaxberg. How you doing, Zephan?
Hey, what's going on, Alex?
On this series, I interview creative entrepreneurs to really find out how you can take your creativity and turn that passion really into profit. Zephan, to get started, will you just tell us a little bit about your background?
Yeah, man, absolutely. So my story, I guess, kind of starts in May of 2013 when I left my full-time job. I graduated college with a film degree in 2010, ultimately worked for a marketing company. When that was sold, I ended up going to work for Apple as one of their Genius Bar guys in the Apple store. And this wasn't really a creative path for me. It was just seeing a lot of really upset people all day long with broken stuff. I thought that it would lead to, potential with corporate, maybe doing something with video again. But after about a year, I decided it was time to go. And so May of 2013, I walked in one day and I handed in my 2 weeks notice. And it surprised everybody because I was kind of one of their leading people that, took the most appointments, really helped out when the going got tough. And I was kind of like that guy that they called in when the really pissed off people came in. So I was kind of like the backup plan. So they were a little upset to have me go, but ultimately, it was up to me. And I think that's probably a mistake many people make is they get stuck in thinking how much their job or their coworkers are going to lose out when it's really your life to live. It's not theirs. So that was when it came time to leave. And I started a video production company. Pretty much 2 weeks later, I just took a little bit of time to collect my thoughts, take a break, and just see where I wanted to go. And I had been freelancing all along. So I've been freelancing video for the last like 2 or 3 years. So the natural move was just take what I'm already doing and move that to full time and just put my full effort into it. And the video company took off within about 6 months. I had an invite to the White House to do a video shoot there and a photo shoot. And then after that, things just exponentially grew and grew and grew from there. So it really started with making that decision to take the leap, and then just doing good work, putting it out there, building a solid network of people, and a good connections that would call me constantly. I mean, that's really where it's been now is in the referrals. I get phone calls and emails all the time of, hey, I saw you did this thing, or I know we've been talking about video for a while. Let's go ahead and jump in. I don't think I've ever actually had to market my company. So that's one of the coolest things is when you build those relationships, you do solid work and you put it out there, people tend to flock to you, which works out really well.
And how did you get the gig with the White House? It was all through referrals?
All through referrals. So one of the first things that I did during those 2 weeks was I started to look at local networking events through like meetup.com. There were some other networking sites just for the local area. And I met a ton of people, one of which actually wound up getting me hooked up with the NFL and the NHL. So later down the road, that was huge. But the client for the video shoot was actually another local videographer who needed an extra hand. And he called me up one day and he said, I've got a gig tomorrow. I can't tell you what it is, but I need you to send me a copy of your driver's license if you want to go. And we would be going down to DC. Now, I could have taken a guess as to what it was going to be because you don't exactly need my license unless you're doing a background check. And if we're going to DC, we're probably going somewhere high profile. And so I said, sure, let's do it. I sent him a copy of my license, and he said, meet me tomorrow morning at my house, and we'll go from there. And we jump on the Amtrak, and he still hasn't told me where we're going yet. And we've got all the gear. And we get into DC and he grabs a cab. And first we go to a camera store. He had to pick something up. So I'm like, come on, man, we're not just here to go to a camera store. Like, what's going on? And he's like, all right, so we're going to the White House. And I was just mind blown. I had no clue that I would be walking in with clearance, first of all, which they have to give you to get in. But I was actually filming in that press room with, the blue backdrop that you always see on TV and all that stuff. So it was really cool to be there. And it really was just knowing the right person and being there at the right time.
Yeah, I speak to a lot of young entrepreneurs, and really putting yourself in a position for success it's essential. Not only the connections and the meetups that you go to, but really taking the risk. You didn't know where you were going and really putting yourself out there. And I think that is something that young entrepreneurs have to do. They have to go to conferences, go to meetups, really build those relationships. Me too, as I built my web design and consulting business, I never really had to market my business. As a competition became bigger, I definitely had to put myself out there a lot more. But it comes down to really those connections that you make, putting yourself out there, showing that you first of all show up and you're
Mhm.
reliable and you do great work. That's really the start of building your creative master plan.
Yeah, and I think it's also, not only partnerships and just meeting people at networking events, but, partnerships with the right types of people. So for example, a good friend of mine is a web designer, and he always, always, always gets these clients where their website's like 10 years old, has no new photos or anything on it. And it's a perfect time to partner with him where he'll say, "Hey, I've got this client. They're, 20 minutes away from your house. I need you to go out there and shoot some video and photos for me. Just send the bill to the client. I already talked to them about it." So strategic partnerships like that have also been really helpful for extra filler work where, anytime he gets a client, essentially I get a client too. And so little stuff like that really makes all the difference.
Now let's talk about video, because it's something that people like to get into, but it can be difficult to get those good gigs. A lot of times you're doing a lot of the technical grime work for a little while, but eventually you may be able to put yourself out there and get bigger gigs. What was your motivation to start doing video and then put that into an actual career?
Yeah, definitely. So I think that for me, it was actually, a lot of people say, "Oh, I was motivated because of this or that." And actually, for me, it just seemed right. I had gone to school for video. I had been doing it for so many years. I had done it back in high school. So I'd really been in video programs for probably 8 years before I even graduated college. So for me, it was just kind of a natural progression. It was something I was very good at and that I had been doing for quite some time. But I think that you still have to have that motivation there. And so for me, really telling that story, it's really all been about the story. So I'm not there to just promote your company. Apple definitely rubbed off on me. I take the Apple approach. And, if you look at any Apple commercial, there's always some story that they're trying to tell. It's not just, "Hey, here's the new iPhone. It's shiny. It's got this bigger screen. You should go buy it." So it's figuring out, telling the story of the owner, or how they struggled to get their business to that point, or what problem came up for them and that's where they created the solution, and the solution was their business. The motivation for me has really been meeting people and then hearing those stories and finding a way to craft that into something that they've never been able to word in the way in which they did on camera before. So I've had so many people tell me like, "Wow, you really worded that perfectly or said that perfectly." And I'm like, "Yeah, just repeat that back to me on camera. It's perfect." And they have so much trouble with it because I'm rephrasing or recreating the way they're looking at their own business. But I love to see when people light up about that, because to them, they're getting this renewed satisfaction of, okay, like I'm on the right track too. And I think that's where everybody's at.
Well, I think the narrative piece is really important because it can seem so simple and seem so basic, but it's actually very tough to do. Even when you're marketing your own business, when you're selling or you're talking to a potential prospect, if you can talk to them through stories and through narratives, they understand a little bit better. They relate it to their own situation that they're going in. And I've tried to put it into movies, and it is tough. I don't know if you follow like the hero's journey approach or things like that. But can you tell us like your ideas of how you kind of figure out the script and the narrative of your stories?
Yeah, definitely. So I would say, if you think back to when you were a kid, and I don't really remember too much of this, but I know that parents do this now. Many parents get these books that teach you certain things. For example, when you're potty training, there's a book about going to the potty, right? And you read it to your kids, and ultimately it clicks and they get it. And, that's a natural step in the process. Same thing goes for like, if you give a mouse a cookie, he's going to want some milk. That was a great book when I was growing up. There's all these books, and you're teaching them the very basics of what they do in life. And I think that if we kind of go back to the video stuff, I'm really getting down to the basics of journalism in a sense. Who they are, what they do, why they do it, when they do it, how they do it. And so I try to find some sort of a piece that got them to where they are now. That's really the first step. And that's what I do in a lot of my podcast interviews is I go back and say, tell me how you got to here. So whether you're, multimillionaire entrepreneur, whether you're a lawyer, a police officer, a doctor, whatever, how did you get there? And usually somewhere in that story, they're going to say something that clicks like, oh, I was, sitting with my grandfather and he was telling me this story and boom, that's what you're going off of. And when you tell the story of that and how they got to where they are now, there's usually a really good golden nugget in there that's going to get you started. And then it's really just a matter of asking questions off of that. So let's just say, for example, I asked someone how they got into being an investor in the stock market. And they say, well, I remember sitting there, and this is actually a true story of me. I remember sitting there, and my grandfather, I mean, he could rattle off. Didn't matter what the stock ticker was. He could tell you what it was worth if it was a good buy for like the last 20 years. And so for me, that had always sparked an interest. And I actually later learned from asking more questions that a lot of my grandfather playing the stock market was how he afforded my father, my uncles, and my two aunts tuition for college. And they didn't go to cheap colleges. My dad went to Hopkins. My other aunts and uncles went to very nice schools. So I was always inspired by that. And so I would kind of dive more into that story and tell that story to explain how today I've actually grown a side business of investing in stocks alongside my videography business, which totally true story. So this is not made up. This is actually all happened to me.
Nice, excellent. And now let's talk a little bit about your podcast. A Year of Purpose is the name of the podcast. I've listened to it. It's very inspirational. Actually, I listened to a couple of authors, and I definitely bought their books. Really, just a podcast that really that people can relate to wherever they're in their life, whether they're old, they're young. What was your intention on starting the show?
Yeah, absolutely. So there was a crazy, I think it's a very cool motivation for this. So back in college, I always said when I graduate, I'm going to walk across that stage, get a one-way ticket to California, and I'm just going to make it in the industry. I always thought I'd be like an editor or work on set for a movie, and I never did it. I was in a relationship when I graduated. I moved back home. I settled, and I'm not in that relationship anymore. So I totally could have gone out there and done that. So fast forward a little bit to last year in 2014, I went on a bit of a spiritual retreat. Mind you, I'm 4 years out of college at that point. Hadn't really thought about California in a long time. And we're hiking up the side of this mountain. And I'm thinking, what's the one thing I always said I was going to do that I never did? And mid conversation with somebody, I said, I've got to go to California. And we were talking about something totally different. They said, "What? What?" Like, but they got it. It clicked for them. They realized that I made a breakthrough inside and I had to like keep going with this. And, I told them the story. I said I was always planning to go to California. I never did. I've got to go. And so this sparked this whole interest in travel hacking. And I started travel hacking last year and racking up the Sky Miles points. And I spent all of November and December traveling about 10,000 miles and couch surfing around the country. And when I got back, the very last leg of our trip was actually a 3,000-mile road trip with my cousin. And we got back. It was either New Year's Day or the day after. And, we're driving through DC. We're almost back to Baltimore. I'm thinking about New Year's resolutions, kind of, there's no real plan for how the year's going to go yet. And I said, I don't want to be this guy who just makes a New Year's resolution and then 2 weeks into the year, I'm the one who isn't going to the gym anymore or isn't doing this or that. So how do I kind of flip this on its head? And maybe you've got this from a creative standpoint. I was always taught, look at what everyone else is doing and do the opposite. So whether it's photo or video, I'm constantly on the opposite side of the room if there's any other photographers in the area. So I flipped this whole thing on its head. I said, well, so many people fail. Why? Well, because they go out there and they make like 20 goals and then they get so overwhelmed that they just don't do it. So by flipping it around, I said, well, what if I make the year the goal? And if I promise myself to wake up every day knowing that I'm living my life and living today as a part of that goal to make this my best year yet, then I'm successful. And then there's no fear of, oh, I didn't accomplish that thing this year. I suck. I'm terrible. There's no self-talk anymore. It's like, as long as I uphold this promise that I'm making every day special, then I did something right. And the coolest thing is, looking back at the time of recording this, it's now November, so we're 11 months into the year. Um, my business is better than ever. I've had more clients than I've ever had. I think I've given out something crazy like 200 invoices this year. So that just kind of goes to show. And some are little projects, some are bigger projects, but that's the life of a freelancer. I've written a book. I've had this podcast going. I think we just released like episode 65 or 66. I've met and made so many friends from all over the world. Attended so many conferences. I took on two new coaches this year. So I consider this year a huge success, and I don't think that any year that has come before 2015 has been my best year. I think 2015 truly has been my best year.
Awesome. Congratulations. And before we jump into the book, I do want to talk about the life of the freelancer, because it's not a journey that's a straight up and down. It's a roller coaster and all over the place. How do you keep your mindset in place to have that abundant mindset, that know that there's always going to be work coming along, even if 1 month doesn't go as well as you should?
Yeah, definitely. So this is a great question for me, especially because I've had months where I'll look at my calendar on my phone and I'm like, wow, I have like one project booked for next month. I really have no idea where my money's going to come in from. And it's been a very, very real scare. A lot of people have that, especially in the freelance world. And so I learned something very unique about this type of a situation. And it's kind of in association with the law of attraction. So if I look at this month and I say, I have no work for next month, I'm going to have no money. I need money. I need clients. I need this. I need that. And I look at it from this place of needing. I tend to not get it. Now, if I take a step back and realize, all right, I've been doing this for almost 3 years on my own now. I've been through ups and downs. Every single month, stuff always comes in without fail. It would be great if the world would help me out right now. I literally book like three clients the next day, and it's all a mindset shift. Um, I think it's all about throwing yourself out there to the world and saying, "Here's what I'm doing, and I'm really hoping you can help me with this." And a perfect example was when I hired one of my coaches this year. I paid like $3,600 that I really didn't have to spend. And I told him, I was like, I know that it's worth it to work with you. That's why I'm doing this. But I'm telling you, I'm scared because I don't really have this money to spend right now. And the next day, I landed a $3,000 contract, and that paid for what, 75, 80% of it. So I think that it's really a matter of saying, this is my intention. This is what I plan to do. I'm really hoping the world will take care of me. I know it sounds like a little woo-woo and a little odd, but I think that if you go into it with the right mindset and the right attitude, it really rubs off on a lot of the people around you, and they tend to notice if you're coming. It's kind of like if I were to come and ask you for a favor, you'd kind of know going into that conversation that I'm trying to ask you for something. Like, you can just sense it, but it's different. If I came to you and said, "Hey, I want to catch up with you," and then at the end of it, you might have said, "What can I do for you?" And then I brought it up, it's a totally different conversation.
Yeah, it really does make sense. I've been doing freelance now for 10 years, but on my own full time for almost 5 now. And it seems that you do go through this roller coaster of these highs and lows. But if you just stay focused on what your ultimate goal is, serving your clients, producing the best results, showing up, it really is going to come back to you. You have to put yourself in a position of success, go out and put yourself out there, go to meetups. You still have to do that. But like the saying says, when you're ready, the coach will appear or the master will appear. For me, it's always been like when I'm at some of my hardest times, it seems like the right client almost shows up and helps me kind of propel to that next level of where I need to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I mean, it's not magic, right? But I think that your mindset rubs off and reflects on other people, and they can tell where you're at. And so if you need help, they're going to give you help. And if the world realizes that you have too much work on your plate, it's going to dry up for a little bit. And I think that was a perfect sign for me. I mean, I'm finishing up my book here, and I was thinking, November's going to be nuts. I'm probably going to get this huge influx of work, and then I'm not going to have the time to finish up my book. And I've actually gotten pretty much the right amount of work, if not like a little bit more, just to give me that courage and confidence that I'll be okay.
All right, cool. Let's talk about the book, Life Rescripted. Find your purpose and design your life before the curtains close. Give us a little synopsis. When's it coming out and how we can find out more?
Yeah, so much like the podcast, this was also kind of inspired on my journey to find out more about myself. And I wanted to figure out, who am I when you strip everything away? And that really happened on the trip. I stripped away my home, my bed, my creature comforts. I pretty much just had my laptop and some clothes and an extra pair of shoes. And I really learned a lot about who I was. So taking my background in video, I thought, what if we looked at your life as a story, much like how I do as a videographer? We're telling your story, right? And what if that story had a writer, a director, a producer, a casting manager? What are the pieces of it that you like, and what are the pieces that you want to change? And I found that I had actually done this, and I have this here as a reminder. I always keep this here. I sat down one day with just like a legal pad, and I wanted to know who I was on paper. And I sat there and just wrote out pages and pages of like who I am. And then I tore those pages off and I sat them to the side, and I started writing down the parts of that I really liked on a new page. And then I started adding on things that I wanted to be, that I wanted to do. And that really gave me the idea for the book. I wrote out a script of who I am, and then I tore the pages off and wrote a new script with all the pieces that I liked from me, but all the pieces that I wanted to change or improve. And so Life Rescripted is taking you through that process or through that journey of not only crafting a story that's very much like a cinematic movie, but also figuring out where the pieces are in your life that you want to change. So if you're playing casting manager, let's talk about who the people are that you're surrounding yourself with. If you want to play writer, it's totally up to you where the story goes next. And we kind of talk about that choose your own ending sort of thing. And the best part about it is this is laid out in a way where you're not going to pick up the book and say, oh man, this is too much for me. It's actually laid out in the process of going to the movie theater to watch a movie. So there's a chapter called Please Silence Your Cell Phones. It's all about silencing the distractions in your inner critic. There's a chapter called Concessions Are Available in the Lobby. So, I mean, this is something that everyone's really going to get. It's going to be very easy to read. And I don't necessarily call it revolutionary, but I think it gives you a different perspective on your life and where you're at right now, and gives you a really great starting point to figure out where you want to go.
Excellent. I'm really looking forward to it. It really does make sense because now I'm going to be 40 in 2016. So I've kind of gone through this real, what am I really good at? What am I bad at? And how can I figure out how to, forget about my weaknesses and just really go after my strengths and connect with people who are really going to accelerate me in that way. And if you don't really self-assess yourself in that way that you started out and really figure out the characters that you play in your life, then you have no direction.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that this is probably the easiest way to figure out where you are. I mean, I wrote down everything from, where my retirement funds are to where the trips are that I wanted to take this year, to, joining a sports team, all sorts of stuff. And then I literally, when I rewrote it, I went down to saying like, what my workout was going to be, what I wanted my diet to be like, that I wanted to buy, a blender and make healthier smoothies. I mean, I went very detailed there. And everyone, when you get a chance to check it out, our launch date right now is in January of 2016. And we actually pushed that back just a little bit to make sure that we got everything just right for everyone. There's going to be a lot of great content online for free that's going to companion the book. So we're excited to get that to everybody.
Excellent. And where can we find out about getting on the early launch team?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you head on over to www.liferescriptedbook.com, you can check out everything that you need to know about the book. It's also, there's a little place there where you can sign up to find out as soon as it goes live. We're going to be doing some really cool promotions, giving it away for free, and want to make sure that you're a part of that, because if it's going to be free, then why not jump in and grab it when you get the chance. So head on over to liferescriptedbook.com and to find out more.
Awesome. And if you want to check out his podcast as well, it's called The Year of Purpose Podcast. Just check it out on iTunes, wherever you listen to podcasts, I'm sure. To close out, Zephan, what would be the next step that you would tell young entrepreneurs to really take to, maybe they're in corporate now and they want to leave corporate, or they're about to finish school and they really don't know what to do and they may necessarily not want to get that job. What would you tell them the next step that they need to take is?
Yeah, so when I made this jump, when I took the leap, I was very smart financially, and so I think that wherever you are in the process, getting yourself straightened out financially is probably the best thing that you can do. For me personally, that was creating this fund that I called my "If I Screw This Up" fund. So I basically gave myself a 6-month fund of, here's my bare minimum, bare bones. If I get absolutely no work coming in, this is enough to cover, rent and food and just, creature comfort expenses. And so I really think that getting your credit in order, getting your finances in order, there's free apps like creditkarma.com. I use them all the time to check my credit score and just make sure that my credit's okay, that I don't have any outstanding bills. Pay off your credit cards every month as best as you can. Make a savings, make a retirement, put whatever you can in there while you can. And I think that, I'm definitely in a place right now personally where financially, I think I'm okay, but I still put as much as I can into my retirement because I feel that it's more important to have my retirement set up than it is to have money in my savings account right now. Mm-hmm. And so I think that making sure that you set yourself up for the future, that there's actually something there for you to get to in 10, 20, 30 years, or even just a backup fund, 6 months from now, if the car breaks down, if you get hurt and have hospital bills, just making sure that you have that there and set up for yourself.
Awesome. Thanks a lot for your time, Zephan.
Thanks for having me.
For weekly new episodes and an archive of over 100 digital marketing experts, make sure you go visit the website marketingoptimization.tv. And remember, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Later.